answer is absolutely. There's enough space. Did you want to comment?
Yeah, sure. Yes, I would love to. Okay. So, yeah, I think your soundbite really captures what I mean by kind of this notion, this archetype of the kind of the benign bullshit artist. I mean, obviously, if you dig down into that, into what is the reality of La Cosa Nostra and what they do and etc. I mean, we know that this is very nefarious, very kind of potentially harmful people, dangerous people, but also people who have some kind of internal ethos that they, for a time, attempted to be respectful of. But I think this person, who's like, hey, I'm a bullshit artist. Hey, bing, bada, boom. I mean, that is another version of that same kind of archetype. I think that the willfully ignorant, someone who is tethered to untruths and then gets on a podium with those untruths, I do find that person to be probably the most dangerous, because I find personally that this is probably the most associated with kind of more what they used to call access to type personalities, where it's like a willful ignorance. It's like willful. Actually, I would take that back. That would be kind of an unwillful ignorance, and then continuing to kind of propagate harm. So someone who's willfully ignorant is the facts are out there, but they're just not going to do the work to find out what they are, and they're going to push their own agenda. I think that's kind of the most smarmy, because there's not much you can do with that. I see a lot of that on Clubhouse. Some people, they speak with authority, but if they're presented with facts or cited facts, and it's from a reputable source or whatever, they can be kind of compelled to consider them. I've often heard you, Steve, be compelled to consider kind of an alternate viewpoint when you're presented with the receipts, so to speak. And I don't consider you to be a bullshit artist at all. I do see you trying your best to be as honest as possible. Like sometimes you got a little bit of that radio thing going on, but you know that. And
it's called shtick,
right? Yeah, but shtick is another variety of BS artists, and I guess in some ways it is, right?
Shtick is a form of bullshit, but I do not believe it takes away from my sincerity or honesty. Please continue.
Yeah. That's the nuance I would agree with as well. So I don't know. I think that's why I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater here. I don't want to assume I understand the nuance of this person's argument. I'm just saying, on the surface, the more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm compelled to believe kind of the opposite of what they're saying, and then maybe want to kind of parse out a little bit more of the nuance of varieties of bullshit and varieties of lies in it.
Exactly. There's a scale. Andrew, take a few minutes, and then I have one more clip online. But go ahead, Andrew. Take a few minutes, please.
Okay. So a real-world example of the current president, believing his own lies is the tariff war that he's now putting on Canada. And the reasoning is that there's a trade imbalance of $200 million or $200 billion, which is not factual. Everybody knows that's not factual. The trade imbalance is $46 billion, and that's because of oil. And that's the only reason. Otherwise, there may be some imbalances in one area, but that's superseded by something that's more so done in another area. So, for example, services as opposed to manufacturing, that kind of thing. So, but this person has proceeded on based on their own lie. And so I see that as problematic. And then in terms of, as I was saying earlier, that person's ability to wield a weapon that no other person on this planet can wield is disturbing to me. Whether he's a liar or bullshit or both, I think there's a potentiality there that we can all come to root. And it's not like it has never happened before in terms of this potential devastational weapon. I did post a piece here from the Atlantic, and they're talking, and I do remember this from another source. There was a Russian intelligence agent who had received information that the United States had launched 5 nuclear weapons towards Russia. And the automatic response is to retaliate. But he did not. He countermanded that with the understanding that they had just introduced a new weapons or a new surveillance system in Russia, Soviet Union at the time, and that it probably was not seeing this accurately, as well as the information that if the United States were to attack Russia, it would be massive, not 5. So, that person used their intelligence and their reasoning and their information at their disposal to come to the right conclusion. But if you have a person that believes their own bullshit, believes their own lies, what's the potentiality for catastrophe? And that's all I'll end there. Thanks.
Great. No, thank you. Thank you. And since no one new is on stage and we got 10 minutes to the break, we've heard Andrew, Scott, Dr. James, and myself talking about bullshitting and lying. I want to play one more clip about not only lying, but doubling down on the lie. And then I want to go to the mod squatters. So other mod squatters who haven't spoken, get ready. I'm going to call on you and see if you want to talk about bullshitting and lying. Well, thank you very much for the sound effect. I appreciate it. This is from Draft Day.
Just talked to Jack Tate in Washington. He said when they found out they had the number 5 pick, first thing they did was send a copy of their playbook to all the guys they were interested in.
Right, we do the same thing.
No, they put a little special twist on it. They tape a $100 bill to the last page.
Why?
So when they're interviewing the guys and they ask them if they read the whole playbook, of course all of them are going to say yes. About half of them, they mention the money, but the other half don't. So when they tell them about the $100 bill, most of the guys get embarrassed. They get flustered. They fess up that they didn't read the whole thing. But ask me what your boy Bo Callahan did.
I really hate playing this game with you.
Ask.
All right, what did Bo Callahan do?
Neither. He said that he'd read it, and then he didn't say anything.
So?
He didn't know about the $100 bill, Sonny. He lied. Never read the whole playbook.
So a lot of guys don't.
Yes, but when they confront him about it, and they tell him about the money, he lied again. He said something like, oh yeah, now I remember. Good one, guys. Jack said he is the only guy to tell the lie and then to have the balls to stand and stick up for the lie.
Let's go to our mod squatters. Lynn, would you like to comment on bullshitting and lying? Lynn.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of your truth, my truth, and the truth. A little bit.
Is that sort of like his side, your side, and the truth? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think everybody kind of makes up their own truth based on their preconceived notions and expectations, but that's not always necessarily what the truth is. And the difference between lying and bullshit is what you're expecting to come out of it, right? Like my grandfather was a prime bullshitter, right? I mean, he made it with a 6th grade education, formal education, into becoming a naval officer and then the vice president of a major bank, right? And he would often say it's because he knew the art of bullshit. And even that could be taken negatively.
In sort of like stretching the truth, gilding the lily, so to speak.
Yes, very much so.
Where you have convinced yourself you're not really lying, you're just sort of stretching the truth.
Or just being able to take the positive. I think in Grandpa's case, it was more taking his innate knowledge and making it seem more important than
You're
knowledge.
You're emphasizing the good. You're minimizing the bad.
Absolutely. And so for me, I mean, I think it depends. We can't really make it nefarious or bad necessarily. We have to look at the intent, right?
Right, exactly.
And that's kind of where I fall.
Is that sort of like, honey, do I look fat in this dress?
Yes. 100%.
100%. Let's go to Violet. Violet, would you like to comment on bullshitting and lying?
Yes, it's interesting that you used the dress example, because that's kind of what I was thinking about too.
Well, you send us mod squatters different pictures of you all the time and say, I'm going to paraphrase, do I look good here?
So, yeah, I mean, I think, like, bullshit is when you answer a dodge more to make them hear what they want to hear. You know, you say, oh, well, that color complements your eyes, or something that isn't really a direct answer to the question. And that's my overall picture of what has been my overall picture of what a bullshitter is. Somebody who says what people want to hear as truthfully as possible, but stretching the truth, like Lynn cited, is another way they tend to do it. And they're saying to themselves, I'm not really lying, I'm just...
One individual stretches the truth, but only to a point where they have convinced themselves they're not lying.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that has been my picture of a bullshitter. Lying is... I tend to think of that as an intentional thing. You're truthfully, saying something that is opposite of the truth for whatever motives you have behind it. So that's my thoughts on this.
In the law, and again, I'm referring to fraud. In the law, fraud is defined as a material misrepresentation, not stretching the truth, but a material misrepresentation to get what you're not entitled to, or deny somebody something that they are entitled to. Alfonso, would you like to comment on bullshitting and lying? Alfonso.
I got skipped.
Alfonso might be busy. Okay. Let's go to JCC, James Corletta. Would you like to comment on bullshitting and lying?
Yeah, baby.
I had a feeling you would. In fact, I got a specific question for you, but you go first.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with exactly what Violet shared, and mostly for the majority of the folks here in the room, it's a liar has intent to deceive somebody, and a bullshitter is just like, quote unquote, possibly stretching the truth. Good examples are, it's like, hey man, did you finish blah 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 that project I asked you to do? And they'll outright lie and say, yeah, I totally finished it. It was great. It looks good. It's turned in already. Blah blah blah. Or by the end of the day, and another one, the bullshitter will probably say, good progress. They'll lead you to believe they've been working on it. They'll convince you in a matter of a way, and just totally bullshit all the way around it, and they never did jack shit, right? So, yeah.
Here's a question I thought of when I called on you. Well, of course, you only have to answer if you feel uncomfortable. You've been transparent that your teenage daughter plays violin. Have you ever had a situation where your daughter said, Dad, does this sound good? And in your mind, you thought to yourself, this sounds like shit, but you sort of said something else?
No, I've been quite frank with her on all those instances. And when she asked me, does it sound good? For the most part, it does. And I'll give like a little critique, like, could you play it a little differently? Can you give me whatever? But when she is working on something that's challenging, it causes her upsetness. When I say, ooh, I heard a little kerfuffle there. And she goes, so, yeah.
Let's go to Christian, Benjamin, and Jesse. Christian, 60 seconds. Would you like to comment on bullshitting and lying, Christian?
No, I'm good.
All right. Benjamin, 60 seconds. Would you like to comment on bullshitting?
Sure. Look, my comment on Trump has often been that I don't think he's lying, because I think that to lie, you have to have the intent to deceive. And I just don't think that he thinks he's deceiving anybody. I think he's calling people into a fantasy cosplay, the way religion calls people into a fantasy cosplay, to pretend and imagine yourself in a different world than the one that is real. And look, I've heard, Steve, even people who run this show enjoy the fantasy cosplay religious ideas. people enjoy being called into a fantasy, and that's the model. It's just he's calling people into a fantasy, and somehow or another that is different than lying.
Thank you very much. Last but not least, let's go to Jesse. Jesse, would you like to take a minute and comment on bullshitting versus lying? Jesse.
I think there's a problem with how information is spread around, not just social media, but in terms of like how public awareness and how educators are working on different fronts and trying to get people to understand what, like when the government makes decisions and when scientists make decisions and what all that means, and like when certain technologies come out and when certain insights are provided to different institutions, right? People want to understand what all this means, but there's just a lot of backlash in terms of like taking certain authorities seriously. And I think part of that issue has to do with how people demographically are predisposed in terms of their upbringing. So I think there's a lot of people that are disadvantaged, unfortunately, especially in America. Like there's just scattered demographic disparity and a lot of socioeconomic oppression, and that's an issue that I think really gets to the heart of misrepresenting information and how people manipulate others.
I really appreciate that. Thank you very much, and that takes us to the top of the hour. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Ask Uncle Steve with the Mod Squad. 2 hours in the tank, 1 hour left. If you're in the audience, this is a great time to be bold, brave, courageous. Come on up, especially if you're new to the show, and get a fresh vibe to talk about whatever you want. I'm going to take a little short break, and we will be back with Reverend Scott running the show. Don't go away, and we'll be right back after the break. Happy Saturday, everybody.
It was true for a long time. That's absurd. So you know what the kids had to do? They had to get on the subway in middle school and in high school and come all the way down to the city from the Bronx. Someone did that. I don't know if Bella was here. Bella, maybe you could tell me that if that's true. That's insane.